just can't get on.
We can see you, Eileen,
That's good because I can't see anybody.
because we can see you and I can hear you. So do
Okay.
you have your video thing at the bottom?
So I've tried to do it with what Trent sent, but I can only see you on my phone, which is crazy.
So you don't have at the bottom stop video?
Mm-mm. I'm just trying to look for,
Did we just show up? Can you see us now?
I can see you now.
Yeah, we hadn't started our video yet. Yes.
All right, that makes me feel better. This is-
Okay.
And can I see everybody in addition to the, whatever the PowerPoints are? I'm sure I should.
Maybe, but I don't know, without being within the room with you, Eileen, I'm not really sure.
Eileen, we see the people where that microphone, you know, when someone speaks.
That's
And
what you
then-
should be able to see. And you should also be able to see like what I call the Last Supper reel at the top,
Right,
right? Everybody, that's all you can see from the owls.
yeah, and you're very, very tiny, but we can see, you know, we can
Thank
see.
Always be seen as very good looking. Louder. Right?
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. So John Elliott, reports.
All right,
Thank you.
everyone's all set?
Yes.
Okay, so since our last meeting, obviously midterms, have gone on and it seems like the transition to the second semester has been smooth. Everyone seems to be getting to their classes pretty easily, especially with this new schedule that we haven't had for a few years now, like everything seems to be working out fairly fine, which is good.
Mission slips for the DC trip have been handed out. That is, I think the cutoff for like when you can sign up for that is pretty soon.
I think they have to be in next Tuesday, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, and that's pretty cool. I mean, we haven't done this trip in a while, so it's cool to see it kind of coming into motion now, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, and Quiz Bowl has a meet coming up this Thursday.
As for sports, both of our girls and boys basketball teams are doing pretty well this season. Girls boast a 7-5 record, and they play Portland not Portland, Cromwell and Valley Regional. Both teams play Cromwell tonight. Boys has a 9-2 record, and as I mentioned, also play Cromwell and Valley Regional.
Track and field has had quite a few successful athletes. We've had quite a few meets so far. 51 foot state qualifying, 51 foot shot put from the bar. He's a junior and he's really good shot put. Yeah, he's sort of like good thrower guy.
You know.
Any questions?
The fundraiser coming up, isn't there, Mr. A? Is it the Harlem Magic?
I believe, yeah, the Harlem.
Wizards.
The Wizards.
Wizards.
Wizards, February 13th.
That's a fundraiser.
Heston's working on a shot already.
You're playing?
Krista?
I just found out. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, we're recruiting. We anticipate we'll probably mostly get the Goodwin kids and the middle school kids to come see. But the all-call went out for any staff member at any school.
I will be there to watch, let me tell you.
Maybe the Board of Ed can make an appearance.
I heard Steve has a great, 3-pointer.
Here we go.
Bad, bad news.
I think
Get in, but
I think they have a good shot this year,
I think it'll comic relief.
always.
Watch your. Any other questions for our board reps? Great, thank you, John.
Eileen, you're muted.
Making me dizzy. Yeah. No.
Al, you got a question?
Oh, here we go. What's the date for that game?
February 13th.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Ellie, and thanks, John. The next item on our agenda is the audience of citizens. Right, so we'll skip past that. Next up the agenda are our meeting minutes, and I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
A second. Second by Jim. Any discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay. Education issues for discussion and possible action. The first item we have is a state school climate plan for a presentation.
Yes, so I am going to turn this over to the administrative team in a minute, but not before thanking them publicly for putting this plan together so quickly. When our Board of I told them earlier in the fall that we were going to present this in February or March, and when our Board of Education approved the budget, and we got through that so efficiently, I said, guess what? You're presenting in January. And they got it done, and Leah took the lead and the team worked together. I hear Krista was quite helpful too, so I'm going to turn this over to Leah and the team with my thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Well, good evening, everyone. I can speak for the administrative team that we are excited to have pulled together this data and this presentation to help us have a high-level look at the data across the spring of last year and into the fall of this year on our school climate survey. And what you'll be seeing tonight and hearing tonight is some of the salient action steps. Well, the goals, first of all, the building level goals, how they connect in general to our strategic plan, the building level goals, then the rationale for such goals, as well as action steps that will be used throughout this school year. And then data that has already been collected from fall onward as these action steps have been in place. So you will hear kind of the story along the way and some of the pulled out pieces of the climate surveys rather, that really helped us look at the building levels with staff and students, what specific data has looked like along the way up until this point. Consistent with our, next slide, please, thank you, Trent, strategic plan, I can tell you that every conversation the administrative team has with other staff across our district leadership team, it really always does go back to the strategic plan. It is not just a something that a pie in the sky, something like the school climate survey is really indicative of a culture that is surrounding and grounded by these three goals. So I know that you've seen them many times before, and it is the background of all the work we do. But I did want to emphasize that when you think of equity and high quality instruction, specifically the third one, safe and supportive environment, a positive school climate factors right into a safe and supportive environment. And when you have that emphasis, it creates the word I'm looking for, the culture for high quality instruction to even take place on a day-to-day basis. And then for us to even embed that, respect and encompassing equity, and so that all students can achieve at their highest. So I hope you see the ties to a lot of this data, because I know our admin team did. And the structure of our presentation tonight is we have a couple of highlights in the next slide, and then we'll be going to each school to give those aforementioned areas of their goals, rationale, action steps, and the data that is currently supporting. So I will be turning it.
Can I just add
Sure.
one thing for some of our newer board members and for our student reps as well? We're required by the state to have these plans. We have to have each school has to have a state school climate plan. Really, this was it was generated from a lot of the concerns about student mental health, bullying. But what it has done for us is it allowed the administrators with their staff to create plans to make our schools more inviting, more welcoming to all students. And these have to be published on our website for the community to view. I just want to make sure that
Sure,
everybody
thank
knows. Thank you.
So we can go to the next slide and I will pass it off to Mr. Anastasio to give some highlights for the high school.
Thank you, Leah. When we're looking at 21-22 school year, we went back and started looking at our behavior data. And these are major office referrals. In the year 2019-20, we had 72 major office referrals for the year. And then we had our remote year, which didn't really count, so it kind of got a little bit skewed. We were pleasantly surprised, though, to see for the 21-22 year, which was sort of when we came back, that the numbers had dropped to 54. So that's something indicative, I think, of expectations and, you know, being clear with our students in terms of their behavior. The data also showed that 94% of the students felt they had friends. So again, that speaks to the culture and the climate. And 87% of the students are involved in sports, clubs, activities outside of school, which that could be Boy Scouts, that could be the fire department. So those were all things that jumped out at us for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you, Mr. A. All right, I'll jump in with the middle school. Some celebrations that we gleaned from our data were that 98.7% of the students said that their teachers expect them to do their best. And that is shown in the classrooms with their engagement, their understanding of the learning targets and goals, and taking ownership for their learning. We see that 95.7% reported that students at OSMS have the same opportunities regardless of race or ethnicity. And the students really showed that equity is in the classroom, it's in the extracurricular opportunities that they're all given, as well as the supports that they all receive. And our last bullet is looking at 97.4% of students report that they have friends at school. We pride ourselves in relationships from staff to student, but realize that really no learning takes place without students feeling safe, connected, and interacting with their peers. So some solid numbers there.
End of the year, Goodwin, we have some shining numbers and what a blessing it is to work with these children and these families that we can present these types of numbers. So end of last year, you know, students, 97% of them reported that they are cared about and there's someone there that is there caring for them. And 95% of students reported that they can solve problems with friends. So the entire day at Goodwin School is very much dictated on relationships and peers working together, classroom, cafeteria, hallway, recess. And we spend an inordinate amount of time, you know, coaching kids. And for kids to report that they can solve their problems with friends is really rewarding. And then lastly, 93% of students reported they can talk about their feelings. So this is students, you know, are able to reach out and ask for help and share what's going on in their lives and work together with the staff and each other. So really rewarding numbers. But, you know, at the beginning of every year, we also have challenging numbers. So we'll get to those in a moment.
So jumping into high school, our goals this year were our springboard, and we chose 3. Again, enhancing student voice in their learning and the school community as a whole. That's something we continue to try and strive to do. Students understanding their own feelings and the feelings of others. That's that regulation piece that came out of all the SEL focus. And inclusion and sense of belonging for all students. We don't want pockets of isolation. And I've used in the past our multi-language learners, you know, the inclusion. They're a very tight-knit group in our building, but we also want to kind of embrace and pull them into the school community as a whole. So those are our 3 goals this year. And this is the rationale. We elected to start early. So we looked at that spring data and these numbers jumped out to the committee. We had close to 40% of students felt like they did not have lots of chance to help decide things like class activities and rules. So that stretched from building wide to the more micro level of the classroom itself. So that kind of spurred our student voice goal. It also indicated that 37% of our students disagreed with the statement that students talk about the importance or understanding of their feelings and understanding the feelings of others. So that empathy and connection, not only realizing their own regulation, but the regulation of others and how they interact. And 62% of students felt there are groups of students who make others feel left out. This is something we've struggled with, I think, since I've been, this is my 9th year. And you wonder, is it just the adolescence angst? In our day, it was the cliques, right? You had the kids who were the sports kids, the drama kids, or is there more there? So this is what requires the discussion, the focus groups to dig more deeply into the data. But that number is significant. So we wanted to build off of that. So action steps, we have a number of them. I just want to highlight a few here because this is all in your packet, but the multi-language learner families, we've elected to sort of resurrect our meetings, inviting family and students to the table, inviting them into the school and having just conversations in terms of the background. Our kids come with unbelievable stories and not everybody knows them. So learning about their educational background, their experiences, and asking the parents point blank, what would make you feel more comfortable? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel you are welcome at our school? What can we do to bridge that gap? And just having that open and honest conversation. We've had about 5 of those meetings so far, and we continue on a rolling basis. And then we sort of share the minutes with the students' teachers, so they get a better picture as well. I'd also like to point out our focus on student voice. Very excited about this. Students are actually redesigning our student government at OSHS. They're designing it as we speak. I have a rough draft here. I don't know if I'm even supposed to share it with you, but Mr. Plotkin, our interim associate, has been kind of spearheading this. He's had a couple of meetings with our student council, and the kids have elected to sort of reorganize, almost mimicking our own government with a Senate, House of Representatives, and an executive branch breaking down. The next step will be to kind of draft this, determine elections, meet with our superintendent to see where superin fits in all that. Is it rolled into it? Is it an ad hoc advisory group?
Can we be the judicial?
We could. We can get rolled. But the exciting part is that Mr. Parkin did it in a way to sort of say, it's yours. Design it, what makes the most sense. And they're kind of promoting an idea now that we have advisories, that there's a representative from each advisory as part of the body. And they're even saying, we can meet once a month after school. That's the entire body. And they could then start making those decisions on a building. So we're very excited about that. We can move on, Trent. I could go on all night here. Okay. So this is some data we looked at this year. So under the topic of, I'll try to stop peers from making fun of other students, 72% agreed with that. And I dug a little more deeply. Our spring survey, only 59% agreed with that. So we've already seen kind of a shift in terms of those numbers. So that's something we're going to continue to monitor. I have the opportunity to reflect on my learning, set new goals, monitor my progress. 79% agree with that. This is really tied in as well to the strategic plan and our goal of students understanding their own strengths and weaknesses. So this is very exciting data to look at for us in terms of, you know, we've already sort of made some headway already. And here's our data for our referrals this year for major referrals. Last year was the 54, as I commented. There's an uptick. There's 38 right now. We're about halfway through the year. So that's something we want to monitor and continue. And we are planning some class meetings, which we had at the beginning of the year, and we share this data with our students. You know, it's redacted, it's nothing personal, but they should see the trends in terms of behavior and climate as well as some overall academic data. So we try and be transparent and communicate with our kids directly as well.
Okay, so at the middle school, our climate goal is focused around a climate of respect, inclusiveness, and responsibility, with the goal of having fewer disciplinary problems in relation to our data from last year. We'll talk a little bit about why we chose that in just a minute. But we also wanted to make sure that those results were proportional across our subgroups as well. So we've been looking at that data as we've gone throughout this school year.
Okay, so our focus areas and our rationale relate directly back to the goal that Dr. Blockman just explained. And like the high school, the data comes from our fall survey. So we saw that 8.6% of students report that they feel they are not treated with respect by other students in the school. 6% do not feel like they are part of our school, and behavioral referrals and suspensions are up. So that number there.
We're good.
They were up. So last year, 415 office referrals and 23 suspensions. And just a point of clarification, I know you saw with Mr. A's presentation, theirs were looking at the majors and ours were encompassing all office referrals. So that could be anything from running in a hallway to pushing somebody down on a playground. So just want to make sure.
And I want to make sure that everybody knows that this phenomena of increased behavior issues existed post-COVID all across the state, almost epidemic, and very much associated with some of the mental health and anxiety issues, and some trauma.
Yeah, and that's a good point. This year, obviously, we're collecting data around that and the numbers are trending back to where they typically would fall in the years previous to COVID.
Okay. So for action steps, again, I'll just highlight a few. We started the year this year with some professional development where we looked at the data from the year prior and talked about where we needed to be more consistent with our messages to the students, what our expectations were for the students. We did find as we had those conversations that across the school and across even within the same teams of students, that sometimes teachers didn't have the same expectations for what was happening in the classroom. So we really needed to make sure that we were all on the same page. So we actually started that at the beginning of the year. We talked about certain expectations that needed to be the same for the whole entire building. Some things came up that had been kind of gray zones that we had not made decisions on. So we brought that back to our leadership team and had some discussions about that. And we talked about how we were going to teach those expectations in each grade level, as well as how we were going to positively reinforce and address issues when we needed to hold students accountable for their actions. So we made sure we had a very clear, consistent plan, and paraprofessionals who are part of all of those conversations. They do quite a lot in our building, so it was really important that they were a part of that consistency.
That was part of our summer work too.
Yes.
Where we all worked together about hitting that reset, because we said we weren't going to say because of COVID anymore. And so sending that reset message to our staff and to our students at the beginning of the year was something that the administrators did really well in their building.
In addition to that, we are still using our PBIS positive behavior intervention and support program. So that teaches our expectations as well as positively reinforces when students are making good choices, and has some tiered supports when students are not. We are continuing to create advisory lessons based on the needs that we see in the building and what students are expressing that they need. Matter of fact, our last advisory lesson, or no, the one that's coming up, the next one, students had talked about, and you'll see some of this in the focus group data, that they're struggling a little bit with the collaboration piece. And again, we had 2 years where they weren't able to collaborate with each other, because even when we got them in the classroom, we weren't even letting them sit near each other. So I think that we had to go back and reteach some of those skills. So we did some PD with the staff on that, as well as we designed this advisory lesson based on what the students said that they needed. This year, we also put back in place SWIS, which is the data collection system that Mr. Anastasio just said, and showed you data from. So we have some data that's from that same system. It's a lot easier for us to be able to look and see where our areas of need are, which students those happen to be, if there's certain times of day and so forth. It's a really good program for that. We are still using restorative meetings. So a restorative meeting, students sit together, we sit and discuss the things that are happening. It's like family style. Okay, this is what's occurred. Students then have to use their empathy skills and build those to understand the other person's point of view. They have to kind of talk about what their solutions are going to be moving forward. And oftentimes we found that that's been a really effective way to resolve issues and help them build their problem solving skills as well, and communication skills as they go through that. This year, I know we've already talked about our leadership group in 8th grade. That I think is really fundamental to putting those students who are making positive choices, or building those positive choices in kids that maybe have not always made positive choices, in becoming a positive influence among our group of students. That's often the hardest group as far as behaviors are concerned in 8th grade. So that I think has been a very positive piece. We also have social emotional learning activities and days that we've built in, and we've talked about those in the past as well. So we do feel like this has actually been really effective. This triangle represents the students in our school as far as the number of referrals that they've had so far this year. Typically that top corner should be typically around 15%. So we are doing pretty well. We've had 93 referrals so far. Our goal
was to cut the number of referrals by a third this year. 130 at this point in the year would have been a third, so we're doing better than we had expected. 38 of those we would consider major at this point. Out of 318 students, 300 of our kids have had 0 or 1 referral. So that really tells us that for the most part, our systems are working and students are learning and are effective with that piece. 14 out of those 318 have 2 to 5 referrals, and 4 out of the 318 have 6 or more. I can tell you every one of those students that are in the red at the very peak of that have plans in place that are specific to their needs, including anything from check-ins, check-outs with different teachers, counseling services, lunch bunch groups, youth and family support. There is a variety of supports that they are getting to help them make better choices and in the end be able to manage the situations at school. And so far this year, we also said that we wanted to cut suspensions in half at least. So we had 5 at this point in the year. To be in half, we were expecting 6. So we are just under that at this point as well. So we've cut that by more than half.
Okay, focus group feedback. So Dr. Blackman and I are meeting with students each trimester. We meet with 6 from each grade level, 5 through 8. And we've learned some really interesting information. So anytime you have an opportunity to sit down with students and give them a voice and how they can contribute to making Old Saybrook Middle School a better place, that's powerful. And we learned some things. So what have we learned? We learned that, believe it or not, our cafeteria is one of the most inclusive places in our building. You know, for years, I've had conversations with students about how difficult navigating sitting next to a peer or sitting alone. And the kids have over all grade levels said, no, when someone's alone, we'll reach out and say, you want to sit today by yourself? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. If they say no, they pull them into their group, which was really interesting and great to hear. Students report that they're nice to one another. So they walk down the halls, even to students that they report they don't even know, and say hello to them. Again, that's middle school.
And staff members that they don't know.
Right, we had it for today, so you might have experienced that firsthand. Most students take care of the school. They take care of the belongings, the things that we issue them, like their laptops. And they like the school, they like the way it looks, and they want to keep it that way. And then most kids report that they're respectful to one another and our staff. And we experience that each day. Our kids are good kids, and our interactions are important to all of us. So we respected that. And an area that Dr. Blockman kind of spoke to a little bit was a continued area of growth surrounding group work and collaboration. So collaboration is a measured 21st century skill. We have rubrics designed around measuring that and students in the classroom. So it's something that's being taught, yet they still struggle. So they state that in groups of 2, when you're paired, not a problem, really easy to navigate that. When you even grow the group to 3, or possibly more than that, they're having difficulties, they're struggling. And yeah, that's coming off of years of, we're grouping kids and keeping them in classrooms and really seeing that it's kind of prohibited their growth in that area. So to Dr. Blockman's point, we've developed some PD around that. We're doing our advisory lesson on the 3rd, which is an activity in collaboration and really trying to teach that skill because it's something that as adults, right, we have to do every single day. It's a lifelong skill. And from day to day, we all struggle with that. So the better and the sooner that the kids can learn that, the better off we'll all be.
Nice.
Okay, Goodwin School. So, I guess before I start, I feel like no one's excited about giving presentations and putting them together, but it's rewarding because after you're done, you realize how much we're doing for students and how many systems we have in place. And I know you've been working with Jan long enough that there's nothing really we do anymore that's not a system. So you can see from my colleagues and then again at Goodwin School that we put systems in place to support students. So at Goodwin School, we're using data to identify needs. And then based on those needs, we're going to teach the skills that have been identified. And we're sure this year to focus on giving students more voice and choice. And I will share a little bit of that when we get to the action steps. But first to the rationale, our numbers are fairly low as far as needs. But for us, these categories were fairly high. So they're not alarming, but they are areas that we are focusing on. So 12% of students reported that other students don't treat them respectfully. So that was rather high in all of our data that we collected. 10% of students reported that they can't make good choices when they're upset. Again, 1 out of 10 really, but it's important to us that we're focusing on that. And then lastly, 12% of students, this was concerning, that they reported they don't have a person at school that they can talk to about a problem. And that really floored us as a staff. We really feel like we're connected to every student. We know every student's family. We know what their interests are, but yet 12% of our students said they didn't feel connected to an adult. So that was the rationale for some of our action steps. And we have quite a few of them. And I will highlight a few. Maybe the biggest change this year is we've implemented the responsive classroom. And one of the biggest parts of that is the morning meeting. So a morning meeting is when students come together and they have a voice to talk about how their evening was, how they're feeling before the day starts. They get to address any issues that happened the day before. It could have been recess, it could be the bus, and it's a problem-solving committee every day that can come together. And as we get halfway through the year, you know, you start to see, like they said, the middle school, certain kids being, you know, repetitively having needs as far as referrals or being disruptive, et cetera. And the morning meeting is a place they can come back as a classroom and they can talk about it. And kids can say, you know, Leanne seems to be, you know, always in my business. And it's a safe environment because they built that to be safe throughout the school year. So that's a big piece of the voice and choice. Now, some students are more comfortable doing that than others, but think about the continuum of doing that from pre-K, eventually when they get to 4th grade, that this is something that they're going to be able to do easily, we hope, over time. We've also started something on the morning methods, you know, after morning announcements, after the pledge. We are spending time talking about soft skills, just using please, saying thank you. Reminding kids about what appreciation is and what kindness is. And most recently, we learned about Jane, who lives in Old Saybrook, who is turning 105. So we introduced random act of kindness. So kids are making cards for Jane. And we're collecting them in the office. So whenever we find an opportunity, excuse me, we're putting it out there to the student body that they can be thoughtful about it. And then as they walk through the hallways or in the cafeteria, when we're talking about yes, please, no, thank you, we're highlighting that every single day in those spaces. I also want to talk a little bit about what we do as far as the data. We have the Decimate measure, which is looking at social emotional competencies of students. And this is data that we collect every year. And then we also have the Beck Anxiety Inventory. They sound very official, but basically what we're doing is it's a checkup from the neck up. How are kids doing? How are kids feeling? And then when we identify those kids, do we have a plan for that student? Do we have a plan for this student? What are we doing for the students that are showing up? They're saying they're anxious. Are they connected to an adult? Are they connected to youth and family services? They're in lunch bunch groups, very much like the middle school. So we're fortunate to have these official measures that will show us each individual student how they're doing. This is where we called the data from 157 responses. There are the percentages that I've already gone over. And you can see that there are some students that are unsure. And again, that intimates to us that we need to also address not only the students that disagree, but also the students that are unsure. So we teach all kids all the skills. We don't single anybody out. And then lastly, we're going on to our district-wide social emotional learning. Leah.
So I think, as Heston kind of just mentioned, as we put together this presentation and then saw some of this information come to life with the stories and the information that everyone just shared, it is quite amazing that our report card, so to speak, is so high. You know, in a lot of cases, this is we pulled out a few pieces of the data that could have action steps or further influence, but in general, I heard a lot of things and that relates to our social emotional screener, which is just one snapshot to look at students, but it is all, there is a continuum and it is connected. And it's not just a morning meeting at Goodwin, that relates to by time, you know, they get to high school and they have that advisory teacher they see every day. There's different opportunities for the same support at, you know, the different levels. So I heard a lot about, you know, problem solving, helping kids with empathy and relationships and respect for others and inclusivity. And these additionally soft skills are so essential to their lives, pre-K to 12 and beyond. So when we think about the use of, you've heard me present before, and I know you know this is our second year of it, but what's great about this year with a social emotional screener is that it helps pull all these pieces together of a safe, supportive environment and what it's really looking like for the individual child, K to 8. So this year, you know, we had the ratings take place, this year will take place 3 times. We did October, we're gearing up to do them again in early February, so coming up next week. And then we'll revisit it and do it again in May. I think what's our momentum has gotten a lot easier this year, and we're able to quick snapshot data, have myself or otherwise present it to our different building level committees, who can then, you know, relay it to necessary teachers and work with the students. And I feel like that has become a more well-oiled machine this year, being that this is our 4th rating coming up in February. Teachers know how to do the ratings. There's more fidelity to it. There's more understanding surrounding it. And we can use the data in different areas. What I'd like to emphasize as far as data related to it is we have students falling in the in-need category under 10%. The national average, as I've mentioned, is closer to 17%. So the fact that we have such a low percentage, but then we have such consistency and care to be working with those students speaks so highly, I think, of the different programs across the board. The competencies we're focusing on, it can be a little bit different per building, but in general, across the board, goal-directed behavior, social awareness, and personal responsibility came up. And we do talk about collaboration has been a big topic in each of the buildings this year, probably for different reasons, but some of them being very similar. And it's always amazing how they all relate. It's just, if you're doing a lesson on personal responsibility, in order for you to collaborate with a group member, you have to be able to have those if you're the facilitator, or you're coming to the group with your research or whatever it is, and kids are learning those skills. So then we can go to the next slide, please. And just a few highlights from this. This is looking at the lens of SEL district-wide. We've really had the opportunity at the high school to have the Flex Block and advisory program. It seems every week, you know, students are reporting that the new schedule is working for them. It is giving the opportunity for consistent rapport building with an adult in the building. So, you know, if that was something early on that kids might have reported maybe in 4th grade, I don't feel like I might have that. There are mechanisms in place to really support that at the different levels. It's also a space for groups, as I mentioned down below. Last year, we had some data on the BI and the DESA. We didn't really have a space, at least at the high school, where a space of time where maybe 6 students could get together and have a block, you know, 25 minutes for a group. So those are running with a set curriculum and with identified students. And that's been great. As Krista and Matt mentioned, and the Pride and Advisory Days, it's really great to see the level of detail and the processes that go through having any activity. It's not just an activity thrown to students printed off. It is several levels of the student support team, the Pride Committee, teacher feedback by team, often student feedback like you saw before, and then a lessons rolled out. So it has been a fresh new lesson every month. I've seen it, even compared to last year, and often tailored by grade level. So that's really remarkable. Goodwin's Responsive Classroom. This has specifically created a lot of opportunities for my work this year. I've trained paras with some of the language and philosophy surrounding it. It has created a space for us to kind of work with different teams to kind of align whatever their programming or goal might be. Some have it by grade level. And that morning meeting, as Heston mentioned, has been a huge piece of consistency for social emotional learning across the district or across at least Goodwin there. And I feel like that piece really starts off a child's day in a way that's very positive. Wellness days at each school, as you probably know, it's now it's required to have a wellness piece each year. So we already had that in place, and we are looking at each one to pull in new pieces that in many cases we haven't been really allowed to do because of COVID. So it's really nice to be bringing those visitors and experts and specialties and fun things for the kids back at school. Staff are trained in microaggressions and micro celebrations, so all students are feeling accepted and proud, different levels of that at each school. There's been staff professional development and then personal choice for staff surrounding wellness options. Continued resources for the L students and specifically what Joe had spoke to, just creating opportunities for these students to have a voice, and if they do not feel connected, think tanking around how we can make them feel connected. And then lastly, we just had our collaborative services team across the district. We meet 4 times a year. That's all the social workers, counselors, mental health specialists, Kathy Dye, and all youth services staff who work with our schools. About 20 people in this room. And it was really phenomenal to see the ongoing tailored supports that our youth services offer and then integrate with our school, different upcoming prevention programming, working with groups in each of the schools, their interns and otherwise. So I think large picture here, just kind of wrapping up this presentation, what we've shared today is that we are making very informed decisions with our data. It's not a one-stop shop. We're going to fix this problem because the problem can't be fixed with a one-stop shop. It's consistent, targeted, and very, I think, very caring culture that we have here. And there's so much, there's really a lot of fidelity to doing it right, and to when it's not right, or when there is a concern, even if it is a small percentage, to flipping that upside down and saying, okay, how can we work together as a team to help this group of kids? So thank you, everybody, for the admins for presenting, and also for everyone listening tonight. And I'm sure we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, excellent presentation. Questions?
I just wanted to say what a comprehensive presentation and the collaborative efforts that all of you do. It's so cool to watch it start from Goodwin to the middle school to the high school. Thank you so much. Our students are fortunate, and I appreciate your efforts.
So Trevor, I don't know if you can see me, but let me know when I have an opportunity.
Actually, I'm quickly at a comment person.
Thank you. I just have 2 questions. One for middle school, collaboration on the group projects. And clearly it's such an important skill for them to learn. Are teachers now grading collaborative projects on individual work? Because I know one of the things that kids struggle with is that everybody gets the same grade.
Yes.
But that's changed now.
I think for the most part, I can't guarantee for every single one, but we have had conversations about that, and they may have parts of the grade that are the same, but then individual pieces as well.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're also getting specific feedback on their collaboration skills as well, individualized to them.
That's great. That's really great. And then Heston, in the rationale data, did you notice if any of that is concentrated in any particular grade or part of the school? The 10, 12, 15, the reporting other students that treat them respectfully.
Right, so this is school-wide.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
K and 1, those surveys are administered orally, and then the students fill it out so that we have some fidelity, they understand the questions.
Yeah,
In grades 2, 3, and 4, they do it online.
online.
So it is school-wide.
Right, but you didn't notice a spike in any, like, is 8% of the 12 in any particular grade area, or you just didn't drill down that low?
We didn't drill down that low. We do find that the older the students get, the more concerns or more needs,
Right.
because they're maturing.
Right,
They're
and then
becoming middle schoolers.
Yeah.
And their tolerance for each other
Yeah.
dwindles as they get older.
There you go. Isn't that- it's with a lot of- So thank you very much. And then one last comment, Leah, as I was hearing you speak about the wellness days and everything, like there's a major initiative at my work right now for Wellness Wednesdays, and we have a whole program that they just implemented that people can register for. So, you know, you're just leading the curve with doing it at the grade school levels.
Cool.
We do an initiative with Julie as well for the staff specifically across March and April for like a wellness challenge. Really incorporate that.
Yeah,
too.
that's important.
Good, thanks.
Anything Dave, I can get a question, Eileen?
You're muted.
Or you?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All righty. So thank you so much for the presentation. Everybody knows that student choice, voice, reflection has been a passion of mine. So my question is, we have two student reps that are there this evening. I'd like to ask them a question about what they think about student voice and if they think that it's happening in their learning. Has it ever happened? And do they see it, number one, changing and what it means? Not to put anyone on the spot, but they are basically the audience that was really recipients of a change. So I'd like to ask the student reps their thoughts.
I mean, if I were to start, I definitely think I see that just about every day. I mean, I know, there was, what was that? I think it was 40% said they didn't have much influence on what they got to learn. I don't think I see that nearly as much. Like, I feel like every single day I have some opportunity to either change or decide or have some influence on what I get out of that specific day. I think that's pretty amazing. I mean, take this position. I feel like this is about as big of a voice or like what of influence as a high schooler can get. And the fact that this was available to me, I feel like that shows that there's, I mean, more than enough like opportunity for students to have some sort of effect on what goes on around them. And I definitely think that that's somewhere, or that's something that's been improving and continues to get better as time goes on.
Well said.
So do you mind, thanks for their input. Can you give an example?
Of what exactly?
No, an example of a scenario or a situation that you've been asked your choice and about something.
Oh, so I guess, so recently for my sociology midterm, I basically, I kind of wrote my own project there. I got to choose necessarily what I wanted to do. And I felt like I could best express my learning of our first semester through a podcast. So I made a podcast and I did pretty well in that midterm. And like I highlighted all the points, and it was up to me to make that. And people got to choose what they wanted to do. But it was, at the end of the day, it was my choice that I felt I could best reflect my learning. And I don't know, that's what I wanted to do.
Nice, thank you.
And the other student rep?
I think I pretty much the same as John. A lot of my midterms, I had an opportunity to do something that wasn't the same as everybody else. For example, my US history, I think there were 4 choices for different project ideas for midterms. And then in addition to that, you could also just ask if you wanted to do something different, like pretty much anything you wanted to do. Also with the second semester coming around, the new half-year classes I have, I noticed a lot of like, what do you want the classroom rules to be, like norms, expectations, that kind of thing, and you have a lot of voice in choosing that. And also at the beginning of the year with my full-year classes, I noticed that as well. So yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of voice that a student can have.
So I appreciate your input. My question is probably more, and if you don't mind explaining, and I so appreciate your input as student reps, what do you mean by rules? When I think of rules, it's more like you have to be respectful, things like that. But what do you consider student voice for rules?
By rules and like that kind of thing, I guess it's more like expectations and norms. I think a good example for one of my classes was like cell phone usage. Like, should you be able to use your phone to, I don't know, look something up important? Because for some classes, that's like an important part of like band, for example. If you don't know something, there's a whole lot of kids in there. You can't be waiting all class to ask the teacher if you don't know something. So using your phone in there, definitely a good tool. But for something, I don't know, history, it's not always a great tool to have because you can get distracted. So those kinds of expectations and just, they can change between classrooms and the kids in there, and I just think it's good to have that choice.
And I feel
Thanks.
like I'm, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. That's
I was
okay.
gonna say, I feel like on top of that, we're not really only kind of discussing rules and norms, but we also kind of, at least in my classes, we all agree on values that are to be like expected and upheld. And I've always thought that was definitely pretty interesting, like kind of, in my physics class, we moved very, very fast at the start of the year. And as a class, as our students, we felt as if there were certain things that we needed to go more in depth on as opposed to independent learning. And we brought that up with our teacher, and we were able to have like focused class periods on certain topics that we felt like we didn't necessarily go over enough. And we kind of got to directly influence that and change that outcome. And I feel like that it's not just for that specific class. Like, although it has to happen in my other classes, I feel like that can go for just about anything. I feel like students are able to have that input in just about every scenario if needed.
Thanks so much. I have a question for Joe. Thanks so much for your presentation. So one of the aspects you mentioned was that an action step was that teachers are incorporating more opportunity for student voice in teaching and learning. So is that happening on a professional development level, or how do you get a sense that that's classroom environments are changing?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, our Wednesday extended PD is being led by Karen Dion on the high quality project-based learning. And we had originally kind of planned out as the beginning of the year was re-embrace it, talk about what happened over the summer through the lens of the teachers that participated, check in mid-year. Teachers are actually coming to the meeting with a unit they might want to kind of mess around with. Maybe it's a traditional, unit that they did. And she's sort of spearheading that along with her colleagues, because project-based learning is sort of like organized chaos. It looks very messy, but the outcomes, as our reps have alluded to, when you give that opportunity for voice and choice and allow to explore, more learning takes place. And then we're planning to end the year with sort of a gallery walk with students and the teachers about what they produce. And they're the early pioneers, and we're hoping that kind of spreads out. So that's one example of an approach. We were also encouraging teachers to use more reflection, more sort of self-reflection in terms of whether it's through a 21st century rubric or whether it's for, hey, we just did this unit, what worked, what didn't work, so that the teacher gets that sort of formative assessment and can build next time. So that dialogue is happening. And our Spanish teachers actually use some of the time for midterms to actually conference with the kids. Because conferencing, as we've even found, Jan was talking about teacher evaluation. One of the most important parts of that is the conversation that happens. It's not so much the observation that I do, it's the reflection and next steps. So we're trying to model that for our kids and have our kids sort of implement it. So it's sort of all those phases are kind of coalescing at the high school right now. And I see genuine excitement among the staff, among the kids. And it's harder. It's a lot easier to walk into a class and say, oh, this is what I have to do.
Right,
as opposed to, what are you going to do? How are you going to show me what you learned?
Right.
And you're talking about thinking. And that's what we're here for, thinking, and to create that for our kids. So that's what we're doing.
Joe, thank you so much. I do have a question, only one for the middle school. Maybe Krista or can answer it. Is that you were saying that you're getting students involved now because advisory has been around Old Saybrook Middle School and high school for many, many years. It's taken a lot of different transformations. You were saying that those students, some students, I'm curious to know how you're choosing them, are taking a look at what should be the topics of advisory. And so I'm curious to know what they're coming up with.
Well, I think it's a little bit more broad than that. What we've done really is through the focus groups, identify what areas they are saying are struggles for them, and then using that information to then inform some of our advisory lessons. So
And so
they're
we're
giving us, right, so they're expressing the areas that they're having concerns with. And it's really random how we pick the students. We don't want to pick the same students each time, so we kind of randomly select each group and get a feel for what they feel is happening in the building. And then the areas that they are struggling with are how we target those with the advisory program.
And any like 2 or 3 you can highlight the students have mentioned?
Well, the collaboration was the last big one that came up, that in every grade level focus group, they talked about the fact that when it was a small group, more than 2, that they sometimes had a hard time with navigating that. And some of it is just like you're talking about, how do we make sure that everybody does the same amount of work? How do we make sure that everyone's responsible to everybody else? So some of those, or what do we do when we disagree? So those are some of the things that we took directly from the kids' conversations with us, because sometimes we don't hear all those conversations that are happening in those little groups. But hearing the students' frustration, I think, was really important to help us better understand that that's an area that we needed to continue to do work with.
And I know that the presentation from all 3 of you has been really spectacular, but any issues in the middle school that they're addressing that's social and emotional that would come up for advisory?
The focus this year has really been on inclusivity. So the previous 4 or 5 lessons have really been targeted at teaching students how being inclusive makes Old Saybrook Middle School a better place. So that's been our mantra that we've been working with at the beginning of the year through now. And to Chris's point, now we're taking that data that we've learned from the students and building programs around that to make them more successful in the area of collaboration.
And how often does advisory meet at the middle school?
It's about once a month.
Okay, and thanks so much. And my last question is for Heston, is that I love the fact of the responsive classroom. Sometimes you just wonder in general, like small children don't understand the language about who do you connect with? And I'm sure that you take a look at language and how it's presented. So is that something that you're finding that with that responsive classroom, somehow that's just addressed in a more natural way? Like if you hurt your finger, you would go to the nurse. If you're feeling sad about something, who would you go to? Just curious.
Well, we have our school social worker push into all classrooms and present lessons on these topics. And they have introductions to all the support staff in the beginning of the year of folks that they can work with. The classroom teacher gets to know each student so well that they are able to pull from them, if need be, what's troubling them. And of course, refer them to our support team as to who might be best to help them in any given situation. And that's never done, in isolation without the family. So if we're feeling that a child is struggling, that communication, it starts with the child, but it really very quickly goes home to let them know that we want to work with your child a little more closely because we're seeing some concerns. And we have so much support from our families that normally becomes a very supportive situation for the family, the student, and the school.
Thanks, Heston. I just know that in the past, I do like community helpers, right? If you need to talk to somebody on the outside, you go to maybe a policeman, right? And then how that educates young people, because 12% to me, I don't look at percent. I just look at something that it's developmental and it's growing.
Sure.
But thanks so much.
Any other board members, any comments or questions? Yeah,
No.
guys, thank you so much for the presentation. You're welcome, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the building safety committee report.
Yeah, and I will just go through this quickly. I want to say that we created a committee with the promise that they would meet 4 times and only 4 times and then disband, and we actually kept our promise. So it was, we decided that through conversation with one particular parent and then further conversations with the team, we kind of learned that during the COVID months, we had changed our practices significantly in response to COVID. And one of those big changes is that we closed our schools down. So we became unaccustomed to having visitors in our schools, and some of the protocols that we had in place for safety, security, and wellness prior to COVID had sort of fallen by the wayside. We weren't utilizing them. And so this committee's job was to identify potential concerns because of the lack of use of these protocols and recommend solutions to the schools. So the first meeting was a virtual meeting that just, we created a checklist. What was it that we needed to think about and look at? And then the other 3 meetings were in each school so that we could be there in case we wanted to go check on something about the physical plan itself. What was nice about this committee is it included custodians, secretaries, Board of Ed members, nurses, administrators, teachers, parents, and at the high school students. And it was a very efficient group. I think that we were able to identify problems like we were having trouble with a Raptor system and didn't realize we were having trouble with a Raptor system, which is our system for checking IDs coming through the door. We didn't realize that software hadn't been updated in all of our buildings. And so that was done. We didn't realize that some staff had changed and there wasn't the knowledge of the system that we needed. That some practices and protocols about how to let visitors into the building, where parents could and couldn't go, needed to be just sort of either recreated or just brought back to the attention of the people who were implementing. We accomplished that. They were building specific. We tweaked some things, we made some changes, and we completed our work. And then we sent it out to the general, after the committee reviewed it. We sent it out to the general population. I don't know if anybody else was on the committee, and that's a lot of you here. Has anything else you want to add?
I'm just gonna say, I was at all 4 meetings and I was pleased to see that how good, we were in really good shape across the board. There's minimal things that we needed to tweak and improve upon, and it's a nice position to be in.
So that's my presentation.
Questions?
I don't really necessarily have a, well, you do have a question. I'm not really sure how this would impact middle school or high school, but Heston, as far as the Goodwin School goes, I know, at least when I was a youngster and even when our kids were youngsters, they used to enjoy. The chief of police comes over for a visit, the dog catcher of Old Saybrook comes over for a visit, and different people bringing in different things that they might not experience in their home life or the school life. Do you find the increased security has impacted that at all? If you do have visitors, special visitors coming to Goodwin?
I have not. Visitors that come, it's pretty much the norm that folks realize that they have to go through a process. With our recent indoor air quality issue with the heaters, we had lots of vendors in our school every day, and they come right into the office. We put them through the Raptor system. We do a little explanation of how it works with their sticker and their badging, and they go on their way. So I think it's become pretty much a norm here in Old Saybrook and pretty much accepted. We had one instance where a gentleman showed up, and he didn't have ID. And he also was not able to produce the name of the person, the student that he was there to meet with, and therefore he wasn't allowed into the building. And so we have situations every once in a great while come up like that, but our system works. And I can't tip my hat enough to our front office staff who have to be mindful of that.
Sure.
We have comings and goings every day. And they put that in the forefront of who they're letting in the building and who they're not letting in the building. And if there's ever a question, they pause and we have a discussion. And people are very good about waiting outside and understanding that this is what we do. And
Even when I went to the Christmas show, we had a call in advance, say like register that we were coming,
Right.
press the button, hi, I'm here, so it's a effective process.
it's not a perfect process by any means, never
Right.
perfect.
Well, it's restrictive, but it's meant to be restrictive in some way. I want to make sure it's not overly restrictive so people can't do their general business?
I would say it's restrictive, but it's respectfully done.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Eileen?
Are we good? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry. I'd rather be in person than remote, but I noticed both on Goodwin and the middle school report, it's a challenge because there's a lot of drop-offs. I don't think you can alleviate that. And Krista was mentioning, there's a lot of traffic and kids running, between cars, and that gets to be some dangerous. So I think it's a challenge. Safety, of course, is totally, paramount, as you all respect. And I trust every single one of you impeccably. So I'm just curious, maybe it's just, I don't know, do you need more staff to monitor parents dropping off, and not that we have enough staff because it's tough, or the middle school? I'd just be curious, some of your remediation strategies for that, because I'm just reading the report right now, and that seemed to have a few highlights. So I appreciate it. Some reflection.
So we did recognize that that was a concern that parents, and it seemed to be happening where they were dropping off, they were coming into the bus lane to drop off students, and some of them were going through the other side, and so the kids were coming through where the buses were. So we've done a couple things. One, our resource officer actually stood at the top of the driveway for a while and redirected traffic. We've made notifications in my Friday email for several weeks explaining that where parent pickup and drop off should be. And we also changed a little bit with the buses and what time they arrive so that it's a more consistent pattern and they're more chunked together when they arrive and drop off, so that there's less of that opportunity to happen.
Yeah. Thanks, Krista. Goodwin?
We most recently had a bus survey, and we know that our school was not designed to have this many people dropping off their children.
That's true. Yeah.
But we do have a coned off drop off lane. And today, emails went out, we're starting a pilot. Many of our parents of our ECP children feel like they need to park, get out of the car, walk their children across the parking lot, walk them to the building, drop them off, and then get back to the car, back out, so on and so forth. So we've reached out to just 8 families to start with, and we are going to ask them to pilot moving toward dropping off their ECP child in the drop-off lane. What we're going to do is give them a yellow sign to put on their dashboard, and that signals to us they would like some extra help. We have enough staff that we can open up the car door, we can unbuckle them, we can put the backpack on them, and we can get them into the school. And to make it easy for them, we're going to use their classroom para first. To
Super.
face that they know, someone they're familiar with, someone they trust. So far, 6 families have gotten back to us, and all 6 want to try it. So once we get that going with them, then we're going to try to grow that and try to get to like 80% of families are comfortable in the drop-off circle. This is something we're trying, and hopefully this will resolve people parking, backing, and really clogging up the system and making it unsafe.
Great initiatives. Just tell me ECP means again.
Our early childhood program, so
Okay.
our 3 and 4-year-olds.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Thank you so much, Heston.
You're welcome. Any other board members have any questions they want to ask?
No.
Great, thank you so much, Dan. Actually, it's after 8 o'clock, so the board will report what's going to be, that's fine. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
So our next on the agenda is our reports by administration. We'll start with the Goodwin School.
Sure, I think I just highlighted one of the areas, something that we're implementing, and we'll have some feedback, see how it goes. But so far, we have some people that engaged in it and.
Proactive approach.
Yep, trying to put a system in place that will be better and safer. The other thing I want to mention is the celebration of reading is coming up. And all of you are invited each year. Well, you haven't been invited in a while, right?
Yes.
So you're invited back into the building this year to reading classrooms. And, reaching out to the town agencies and of course, parents and the community. Len Cabral is a professional storyteller who is fabulous.
Got it.
And he's coming in person. So we're excited about that. And we'd love to have you in the building.
What are they doing for that?
It is the last
January.
January 19th. Thank you. February 19th.
Oh, yeah, that happened already. didn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Right, 19.
Hello.
Good.
Also middle school.
Okay, so in addition to our board update, I'll add something to that. So we had our 7th grade team working on a project-based lesson or unit with our 7th graders around tolerance. They're going to be teaching a little bit of history about the Holocaust as well as doing book chats. So it's a nonfiction unit. The kids are going to get to choose from a variety of books with their families. So we're sending all the information home. The students and the families together can choose the books. And they are going to invite families as well as community members to be a part of this book chat. So that information should be going out soon. So if anybody is interested in participating in those. But it's meant to be a community building piece as well, around the theme of tolerance.
Excellent. Old Saybrook High School.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would highlight, we got kind of there's a late addition. We were notified by the University of Connecticut that we were in the top 10 high school for largest percentage of students taking UConn courses.
Wow.
We're 8 with 30% of our students taking UConn courses here at UConn ECE. We're really proud of that. And again, it kind of ties in with the legislation that recently passed with more pathways to, advanced coursework. So, kudos to our teachers and our kids.
Excellent.
Deal. Good deal.
Joe, how does that, is it ECE that we,
Early college experience.
yes, how does that work? Do instructors come here or do students make up to?
It's our teachers who are basically, through their certification, they're approved by UConn, they have to submit their syllabus. And it's different than the AP model. The AP model is more geared toward, you're working toward the high stakes test at the end. And if you get a 3 or higher, or sometimes they only require 4, they require 4 or 5 to get credit. As opposed to if you follow the curriculum and get a passing grade, you're awarded the credit. So, it kind of takes away that high stakes test piece, and it's more over the stretch of the entire year. Thank you. So.
And saves tuition dollars.
It sure does. It sure does.
Thank you, Joe.
Could I just interrupt? I gave that information. I just looked up. Celebration of Reading Week is February 26th to March 3rd.
I was gonna say, Dr. School.
27th. Monday the 27th through March 3rd.
Yeah.
Dr. Fuchs's birthday,
Thank you, Jan.
And so is there any time during that week that you would want people to stop in, or is there a particular day? Is any time that week? Good, thanks.
You'll be sending out a sign up.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have Dr. Fletcher and curriculum instruction and assessment.
He didn't write a report this time because he just got here yesterday.
Bye. Welcome tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, Julie, operations, facilities and finance.
So you have our report, and I know that everyone's aware that we've been spending a lot of time at Goodwin. But we seem to have hopefully worked through that issue. We had a meeting today, and we just asked, anybody, Heston held the meeting, anybody who wanted to come and had any questions, we're certainly an open book on it. So that's good. We continue with the air conditioning project. I have another name for it, but it's not really appropriate. So I won't say, but we've done another piece to that project as well. So we're moving along.
Nice. Thank you. Human services, Leah?
No, it's
Oh, sorry, Kathy?
Nothing really to add. As I said, January starts a lot of planning, not only for all of our students' plans for next year, our plans for the summer, our new application, our new students for early childhood. So that's what we've been really trying to gear up for this month.
Thank you. Jan, superintendent of schools.
Yeah, I'm sure you had an opportunity to look at it, regular business, January, February business, mid-year stuff, but also getting involved in the increasing activity with the General Assembly. And interviews for Director of Student Services. We've had 2. We have another one next week, and hoping to bring candidates to the board on the 6th.
Great, thank you. Now, before we go on to our committee reports, I would like to, I know your staff, feel free to leave, you need to leave.
Trevor?
It's a beautiful one.
I know.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Bye. Thanks, Kat.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Good night. Thanks for safely. Take care.
So, we will start with, budget and fiscal.
Right, so can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So nothing to add here. I mean, we've already the 2023-24 budget was presented to the Board of Finance tonight. We've already adopted that budget at the last meeting, and so at this point, nothing. The Budget and Fiscal Subcommittee has not met since then because we are done for this period.
Okay. Thanks, George. Any questions? Okay. Kay, Eileen?
Yep. Maybe you can hear me. Can you now?
Yes.
No. All right. So
Yes.
anyway, I wanted to mention that I updated information to CABE on new board members. I did send a note, Jim, to you to make sure that you were receiving the information. Is everybody receiving invitations to events by CABE? I just need to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because okay, just want to make sure that you received, because we are members and we are paying for professional development and many opportunities. We had a retreat today with the board of directors, which I attended in Hartford. There was about 20 of us. It was fabulous. And actually, they set some goals for governance and goals for leadership and goals for, let's see, public relations. We want to make sure that the governor knows about boards of education. Having a really hard time having him come forward and at least say that I guess there's a Board of Education week coming up. So that's something we're looking to see happen. We're also looking to make sure that CABE is working hard to work with the State Board of Education. It's just really a tough dynamic, understaffed, but you know, Patrice McCarthy, new executive director, is doing a fabulous job. They have a new policy person that used to nobody can replace Vin Massaro, but he actually was superintendent, I think in Vernon. So it's nice to have a perspective role for policy, although we do use Shipman and Goodwin, but we also, you know, have opportunity to work with CABE as well. We're trying to also teach board members civility and really understanding, because this is happening across the state, how to support your superintendent, how to not micromanage, because superintendents are educational leaders and there's certain areas that board members can be involved in and others that they cannot really be involved in. That is something that's happening often. And so that's really needing to take a good look at it by lots of boards of education. And we suggested that perhaps that come up when boards of education are doing their own self-evaluation. And that's important if that's happening on any board of education. So those members may not be aware of it, but they needs to be clarified. And also just making sure that there's enough opportunity for board members to collaborate. And CABE is always available for you to contact. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eileen. Facilities, Alan's not on tonight, so we're not gonna report facilities. Leanne Warren.
All right, so our meeting we had last week, they're in budget stages right now. What was interesting to hear was, they are coming in quite high as well. So, and we always have a roundtable discussion afterwards. We were really the lowest at that, so that felt great. And they were kind of asking me questions. Everybody was upset with the Science of Learning $100,000 placeholder there. Ocean Avenue School is almost done. They are saying that they're going to be inviting the public to go. I'm definitely gonna go and do my walkthrough. That's it, it's a beautiful facility. And their social emotional hotline and their workshops are almost ready to roll out, and I'll be having that information come.
Okay, thank you. Strategic planning.
Nothing at this time. We will present an update at our mid-year. You'll get an update then as to how we're moving through the action steps.
Okay. Demographics.
Hasn't been meeting.
Okay. Personnel, yeah.
All right, just to piggyback on what Jan said, we've gone through 2 full rounds. I'm so impressed with the level of candidates that are applying. And also too, I really love the system we have in place in this district. I have bought into it 100%. So kudos to Jan for putting together such a comprehensive strategy in place. Also, the kids, the students that were involved in last round and in this this today it's amazing how they really take it seriously and the questions that they come up with. And it's really having a firsthand experience at learning how a interview process takes place. But talk about student voice and choice. They're in on it from the ground floor.
So the last one is on the 31st, right?
The third one is the 31st, and then we're looking at our February 6th.
Got it, thank you. Okay, policy.
Policy right now is on hiatus until I receive information from Jan, because we collaborate closely on policy.
Okay. Thank you. I do not have a chairman report. So that's the last item on our agenda. We have reminders at the bottom. Please note on, where is it? February, we're a special meeting on the 6th at 6 p.m. Assuming we have candidates.
Yeah.
I can say that.
Yeah.
So Trevor, I won't be there on February 6th. I can only participate remotely. I'll be on a train. Is that possible?
Let's talk about that, Eileen,
Okay.
because that's gonna be all interviews.
Oh, that's the final interview?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about that.
And our next board meeting is on February 14th.
Oh, considering the dates.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we always spend it together.
I love you guys. You might consider.
3 weeks away.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it's Valentine's
I
Day.
know, I'm just saying.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring it up. We don't have to make a decision about it right now.
I can take a look at the agenda and the upcoming.
See what is there.
The other option too, we talked about too is doing a virtual meeting, possibly in February.
So you can eat chocolate and be with us.
Maybe it's also my husband's birthday.
That's okay. It's my birthday on the 6th. So that's why I might not be able to be there.
I have a fairly good sense of
Yeah.
the stuff that we have coming up.
Let us look at it. Let us look at it.
Just for
See if we can afford to
consideration.
cancel a meeting.
I thought about it too, like 14th, Valentine's.
Your wife will appreciate it.
Whatever, leadership.
The 28th.
28th.
That would be leadership. 28th would be
No,
leadership.
the leadership this
Oh, it's in
year,
the beginning of
is the
March.
first meeting in March.
Okay.
And to move that for some calendar consideration.
All right, so we do have a meeting before leadership,
Yeah.
so we could do it if we needed to.
I'm open to
Yeah.
possibilities that night, so.
We'll look at the
Okay.
agenda and send it to you. Travis.
So
Send it to you and Alan.
I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?